Welcome to the China Marketing Podcast, the place to go to hear in-depth conversations with industry experts, influencers, and Chinese consumers about the latest consumer, product, and marketing trends in China. Each week, we aim to bring you tactical and thought-provoking content that will help you grow your business in China. The China Marketing Podcast is part of the Sinica Podcast Network, powered by SupChina. I'm your host, Lauren Hallinan. This week's episode is a must-listen for SMEs with limited marketing budgets who are looking to build their businesses in China. Rachel White, CMO of Luuna Naturals, a social impact period care company, shares how they've grown the brand in mainland China despite a lack of awareness and knowledge about the industry among Chinese consumers. Some of the key tactics that Rachel shares include providing highly educational content online and running offline workshops to educate consumers. She said many women in China are being given very limited information on the topic of period care and have a limited range of products available. And so they're grateful to Luuna for the valuable information that they're getting that they can't find elsewhere. She also talked about how they partner with other brands that are targeting similar consumer segments. She also talked about a really interesting tactic, selling B2B. For example, companies will buy female employees a year's worth of period care products plus provide educational workshops to their employees as part of employee benefits. That's something that Luuna has found to be very helpful for growing the business. And then lastly, she also talked about the social impact component. She said that many KOLs and KOCs have given them free promotion because they really believe in the brand's mission to provide period care products to lower income communities. So she talks a bit about how they do that. Again, this is a very useful episode for smaller companies, especially those that are mission-driven. So let's get right into it. Here is my conversation with Rachel White from Luuna Naturals. Hi, Rachel. Welcome to the China Marketing Podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I'm excited to have you on because I think that the company that you work for and the topic that we're going to talk about today is not something, it's not something that's been covered on the podcast before. We'll get into it in a moment. But, I think that, when it comes to China marketing, we talk a lot about beauty products, skincare products, clothing, fashion, food. We've talked about every other category of product,
right?
Except for period care. And I think that it's one that maybe just because of Chinese culture, and we'll get into this some, but I think, people don't tend to maybe talk. It's not a big category to begin with. I feel like, it's not as big as some of those other categories, but, it's something that's been shied away from or just not talked about as much. And we definitely have not talked about it on the podcast. So I'm super interested to just learn more about Luuna and learn more about how you guys are marketing in China. I just think it's going to be super interesting. So could you start things by just going ahead and introducing yourself, a little bit about your background, and what is Luuna?
Sure. So my name is Rachel White. I'm the CMO for Luuna Naturals. We are as you said, a period care company. So we like to think of ourselves as Asia's first female-led social impact period care company. So we were founded in Shanghai by a British woman, similar to me, so hailing from the UK, but ended up in Shanghai. And she was kind of aghast at the lack of options when it came to period care.
I can relate.
So, right? So a lot of foreign women, there's jokes about being tampon mules, as it's so hard to get tampons in Shanghai.
I've done that, raising my hand over here.
Yeah, right. So a lot of people relate to that. And Olivia, Luuna's founder, was kind of a little bit shocked at this. And, she started to chat to some of her female friends, local Chinese friends, about tampons and about kind of different options, and they were really unfamiliar with the concept of a tampon or like choosing anything else other than a pad to kind of use for their period. So Olivia was kind of interested in this. She started to have tampon teas. So this was back kind of 5-6 years ago now. And the brand and the business kind of grew from there. She met a scientist, found out about organic cotton products, which I'm sure we'll talk a bit about later, and decided that she wanted to launch an Asian-based organic cotton period care company that, unlike a lot of period care companies, is actually led by women, because a lot of the big brands are run by guys. And also we felt it's really important that we give something back to women and girls in need in the markets that we're present in. So that's the kind of social impact piece. In terms of my background, I was working in advertising in Shanghai. So I'm obviously originally British, did languages at university, and then kind of fell into advertising, like most people do, in London, and relocated to Shanghai kind of about 5 years into my career, spent 5 years there, met Olivia, was really interested in what she was doing. And then when I relocated to Singapore, we kind of stayed in touch. She started to build the brand and we worked together a bit on like the concept. And then when I quit my job in Singapore, decided to join Olivia's team on a more permanent basis. So became the CMO.
Yeah, that's exciting. I think it's definitely an interesting space. But I think, and I would like to talk about this a little bit too. Just a bit of a struggle, because I think, like you kind of touched upon, there's a lot of consumer education that has to go into it as well. You kind of touched on it just then, but could you give a little bit more background into the period care industry in China and how Chinese consumers view these products? Because like you mentioned, it's, I think, very different than Western countries. Like you said, it's pretty much pads. Like like their go-to is just pads, and they don't even consider other options, or aren't maybe even aware of other options, or have negative connotations about other options. So, maybe you could give a little background into that.
Sure. I mean, the market for period care in China is the biggest market in the world, obviously, given the size of the population. Excuse me. But yeah, as you say, right, and similar to that kind of experience you have as a foreign woman living there, it's a pad-dominated market. So it's around 98% of women in China use pads every month. And that kind of is related to, if you think as a woman, when you get your period, you tend to turn to probably your mom or a teacher or an aunt or an older kind of female figure in your life to give you some guidance about what to use and how to kind of deal with it. And if you think the women who are in their 20s, 30s today, when their mums were, or their aunties or their teachers were growing up and got their period, there weren't any tampons in China. So the women who have kind of guided young women today, didn't have access to tampons, cups, other options. They just, that just didn't exist. It was a pad and that was it. And so a lot of young women in China just aren't even aware that there's different ways that they could kind of manage their period. I mean, together with that, I think a lot of Western brands that have launched in China have really not invested in any education. So I used to work on the Always or Whisper business in London when I was at an agency called Leo Burnett. And P&G, who owns Always and Whisper, also owns Tampax. And the way that their strategy was really a little bit surprising for P&G, really, not very well thought through. It sort of assumed that women would have some familiarity with the tampon. And so they would just Always and Whisper would be present in a market, and they would just use the distribution network that they'd established and just pop the Tampax pack alongside Always and just hope women would know what to do. And there was no education. A lot of the communication was similar to what it was in the West, which is, oh, look, you can, wear a white skirt and run down a beach and jump into a pool. And women were like a little bit nonplussed by this. What is this? I'm happy with what I've got. I don't really need this other thing, and I don't really understand it. And I think added to that, in somewhere like China, where there is traditional Chinese medicine, there's a lot of perception and beliefs around if the body is expelling something, it's really unhealthy to keep it inside you. And so that adds to a kind of fear or kind of concern around using something like a tampon or a cup. So it's multiple things. It's lack of awareness and understanding due to kind of the previous generation not having access to these products. It's Western products, not really on brands, not really educating the local population in a way that is helpful and with any detail. And then finally, it's a kind of cultural conservatism or squeamishness around the category as well. And so that kind of compounds to leave women in a position where, they feel a little bit uncomfortable about the idea of using tampons. Even friends of mine, when I was working in advertising in Shanghai, would kind of, if I talked to them about it, they'd be like, oh no, I don't use a tampon. So these are kind of urban, educated, affluent women, still feel a little bit out of their depth when it comes to switching out of pads. So in that sense, we sell pads as well as tampons and the cup. But yeah, I think, and maybe we're going to talk a little bit more about this, but that's why for us, education is just so important. So we're not saying that every woman needs to use a tampon or a cup. Of course, you need to find what's right for you. But what we do think is important is that women have the knowledge that there are other options, and that you don't have to use a product that's sticky and sweaty and maybe a bit uncomfortable in the summer, and that there's other choices out there.
Yeah, definitely. So to kind of step back real quick, like you just mentioned, maybe you could just go over real quick what are the different products that you guys are offering, and also you kind of mentioned this as well, but like how they're different from the other products available in the market. I think it would be good to kind of step back and go over that real quick before we dive into the marketing and e-commerce or commerce aspect of it, just to make sure that everybody has, a basis.
Sure. So I think I kind of touched on this. All of our cotton products are organic cotton. So when Olivia was building the kind of idea behind the brand, as I mentioned, she met a scientist who introduced her to the idea of conventional cottons in a lot of period care pads and tampons and liners are grown with pesticides and fertilizers that are quite aggressive chemicals, and can or have been connected to health issues, everything from thrush and irritation to infertility and even some cancers. And these chemicals are not removed in the manufacturing process. She kind of explored, the scientist with Olivia explored the concept of organic, and Olivia herself had suffered with irritation on her period. But like a lot of women, had kind of put it down to, oh, it's just my body, it's what it does. So she didn't really think much of it, but having switched to organic, the irritation went away, and she realized, actually, there's really something in this. I need to explore it more. I think the other thing with organic cotton products is that the cotton that we use in our pads, tampons, and liners is GOTS certified, which is the Global Organic Textile Standard. And what that means is that the farmers themselves are paid in accordance with fair trade regulations. They're fairly treated. There's, often GOTS look after the provision of education of their kids to ensure that there's local schooling available, etc., and that the prices that are being paid for the cotton are fair. So all our cotton comes from GOTS certified farms. And I think the final thing to say about organic cotton is that non-organic or conventional cotton farming is one of the leading causes of soil erosion and pollution in rivers and streams, because of the chemicals in these fertilizers and pesticides that are used are really corrosive, and then they just kind of wash away the soil and then leak into the local water sources. So for us, it was really important when developing our products that the cotton products were all made from 100% organic cotton. So that's kind of the first thing to say. We have two types of pads. So we have a kind of regular length and a long length. We stock liners, and we have non-applicated tampons currently, and we're launching an applicated tampon next month. All of our tampons are 100% biodegradable. And none of our products contain any fragrance or perfume or synthetic fiber, or a lot of pads have like a plastic coating on the top that sits next to your body, and a lot of tampons are coated in a synthetic fabric to make them easier to insert. But these materials are often made from a kind of oil or plastic based product, which contains something called a dioxin, which is incredibly bad for you, and you probably shouldn't be putting near such an intimate part of your body on a monthly basis. So none of our products contain any of those ingredients. And then in September last year, we launched the Menstrual Cup. So our cup is 100% medical grade silicone, which means it's a very inert substance and very safe to use inside your body every month. It's also really, really soft. So when we were looking at different manufacturers or suppliers of cups, we wanted to make sure that we were using one that was really soft and really flexible. And so it's really easy for a first time user to get comfortable with. And they come in two sizes, small and large. And I think unlike a lot of period care companies, it's really important to us to sell the whole range, so that as a woman moves through different stages of her life, or she, goes on holiday, or has a business meeting, or, decides sustainability is really important, like we've got a product that's right for her. Because as I say, it's not about everybody should use the cup. Obviously, the cup is the most sustainable option, and is actually probably a bit better for your body because it's not drying out your vagina because it's not an absorbent product, so there's no kind of cotton coming in contact with your vaginal canal. So it's probably better for you, but we're not saying everybody should switch to the cup if that's not something that works with your lifestyle or you're not comfortable with. Of course, that's why we stock the organic cotton products as well.
I'm curious, so who is your target audience at the moment? Is it more those like urban women in like first tier, second tier cities? Like who's the target audience at the moment?
Yeah, so I mean, it's worth me saying we are present in Hong Kong, Singapore, UK, and Mainland China. Mm-hmm. So it's slightly different in Hong Kong, Singapore, and the UK. But in Mainland China, the target is post-90s. If people who listen to your podcast, I'm sure, are familiar with that term. So yeah, slightly kind of younger women, probably left university, educated, working in an urban professional environment, often have an interest in health and wellness, because if that's something that they're thinking about, and they're thinking about, their fitness and what they're eating, and, the products they're using on their skin or their hair, and they're thinking about ingredients, etc., it's much easier to talk to them about their menstrual care and the products and the ingredients that I've just kind of run through right now. It's much easier to begin that conversation if they're already interested in that stuff. So that's kind of our core target in Mainland China. So yeah, it's higher tier cities in general. But that's not to say, I think the cup, for example, has huge potential in lower tier cities, whereby even though it's a larger capital outlay, so it's 270 renminbi for one cup, you can reuse that cup for up to 10 years. So it's much, much more cost effective than buying organic cotton period care. Even if you buy regular cotton period care, and you buy the cheapest version available at like the local Family Mart or 7-Eleven, like the very cheapest option, which is covered in plastic and, you know, made with viscose, etc. It's much more cost effective to use the cup. So that's a really interesting space for us as well.
Definitely. Let's get into it. You know, how are you guys marketing yourselves in China? Maybe you could talk about some of like the key platforms that you're on, some of the, you know, maybe types of content or key messages. Just maybe give a little bit of an overview of how you're marketing.
Sure. So we sell our products through WeChat and Taobao online. For the markets outside mainland China, we have a Shopify. But in China itself, I think, as we've kind of mentioned, women's knowledge of the different products out there, and also, and I think this is an issue not just in China, but in many, many markets, women's knowledge in general of their menstrual health is quite limited. If you think at school, you're never really, like, aside from what your mum tells you or your teacher or whoever kind of helps guide you through it, there's like limited guidance around, you know, what's normal, like what do these symptoms mean, how do you deal with this? And I think a lot of women struggle with like low-lying issues such as really bad menstrual cramps every month, but they only get them for a day. And so then she kind of thinks, oh, well, you know, it's not serious enough to go to the doctor. But what that means is there's a kind of huge untapped need for like learning more, and actually quite a big appetite to learn more, especially if you're speaking to women who have an interest in the ingredients of the products they're using and their overall health and well-being. So as a consequence, all of our content, be it on or offline, is very educational driven. We like to ensure that we're, you know, every interaction a woman has with our brand, that they're learning something about either the products they're using or their body or the impact of the products that they're using on the world. So we also do, the online part is obviously important in terms of kind of creating this type of content that's very educational driven. But for us, a key way that we've grown has been the offline space, where we've done a lot of events. So we do a kind of range of different things. We'll do events which are co-hosted with another brand that's in a similar space. So, for example, a brand that you know, is around zero waste and beauty, for example, we'll co-host an event with them, or we will do kind of speaker events for different communities. So we've done events for Lean In China. We've also done menstrual health in the workplace workshops for businesses. So kind of giving women tips and tricks on how to manage their menstrual health at work and understand their cycle and different levels of productivity during your cycle. And obviously that's an opportunity. After any of these events, we can sell our products. And you know, we've done things with gyms and yoga studios. So right now I'm speaking to ClassPass in Shanghai to try and work out how we can have a steady stream of content. So for example, we've done different positions and yoga poses to relieve menstrual cramps. So that type of content is actually really popular. Really, it doesn't seem that many other brands have done it or are doing it, and women are kind of, I guess, really grateful that we're tackling something which often doesn't, as you said, kind of at at the top of the podcast doesn't really get much attention. So yeah, the event part of what we've built in our community has been really, really important over the last couple of years in terms of how we've grown. And then obviously we do things like markets, or we'll do, like kind of sales type events. But in each of these like more educational driven events, sometimes we sell tickets. So for example, we collaborated with a hospital, like cancer hospital last year, where we offered a free mammogram for the ticket. And the session was about kind of monitoring your health and understanding like different signs and why it's important to just manage your health before anything kind of more serious happens. So yeah, we do a range of different types of like more educational events, because that's just a really powerful way to get to tell our story, but also give women some knowledge that they can really utilize, and hopefully help them understand their bodies better.
Mm-hmm. How is COVID-19 impacted? It sounds like offline events have been really important for you guys. Have you found a way to transition some of that online recently?
Yeah, so I mean, you're right. It was really hard for us. I think the first February obviously kind of shut down in China anyway because it was Chinese New Year. But then March was really tough for us because it was Women's Day as well. So we had a ton of really cool events with different businesses that we work with. So we have a B2B program where we supply period care to businesses for their staff, clients, visitors. And we include within that a menstrual health workshop. So obviously a couple of companies were like really excited to kick this off in a big way for Women's Day for their teams, and all of those kind of things were postponed. So yeah, that was a really tough month for us. But I guess the huge advantage in China is that people are really accustomed to things like live stream. They're comfortable with it, they understand it, they like it, they're willing to sit and kind of watch that kind of medium in a way that I think in the West we're still grappling with. So we have an ambassador program, which is where we it's kind of similar to KOLs, but it's more or micro KOLs, or sometimes they're called KOCs, key opinion consumers. So it's women who don't make their living out of being an influencer, but they have a community. So maybe they're a yoga teacher, or maybe they run a company, or whatever. They have a community, or maybe they're like a mom and they have like a kind of network of other moms that they're in touch with. And we have kind of built a community of these women, or ambassadors as we call. We feature them on our WeChat store, and we kind of provide them with a QR code that means that they can sort of sell the products to their network and community, and we'll give a percentage of each sale to them. And that's been a really good way that we've sort of been able to insulate ourselves a little bit through COVID-19, because it means that we've done sort of little micro online workshops for their communities, or we've done, that they have been posting about us or reposting our content or spreading the word. So I think that's been like quite a good way that we've been able to weather the storm. But yeah, understandably it was difficult for us, being a business that relies so much on offline events. However, I would say it seems that China's opening up a bit now, and we've got a few of those events back in the diary, so that's great.
Yeah, and if anything, I've been hearing a lot that, consumers are more health conscious now than ever. While COVID-19 is not the same as getting your period, it sounds like, people just from a mindset perspective are thinking a lot more about health and wellness, now after the virus.
100%. Yeah, definitely. And I think people are being more, when it comes to like how they're spending their money, they're being a little bit more thoughtful about it. Like they want to spend their money on something that, is really, like you say, it's going to benefit their health. Is like a more mindful purchase. So I think that's an advantage for us as well.
I'm curious, you mentioned your ambassadors and kind of KOCs. It sounds like, you're working on more of a commission basis with them. Have you ever worked with larger KOLs as well, or have you stuck mostly to the KOCs?
I think, yeah. So it's a little bit different in Hong Kong, where the business actually in Hong Kong is a little bit more established. For lots of reasons, like in general, I think in Hong Kong, there's more of an understanding of like organic and what that means. So when we launched the products there was more kind of take up. There's like more natural stores and things in Hong Kong where we could kind of get an offline presence through retailers. So yeah, for lots of reasons, the Hong Kong business is a bit more advanced. And in Hong Kong, we have worked with sort of more renowned KOLs. And in Singapore, however, we're proud to say that we don't actually pay for our KOLs. So our relationship with all of either our ambassadors who can earn commission, as you say, or our KOLs, I think the way that we build the relationship with them is for every product that we sell, we make a donation to charities and organizations that support women and girls in need. So that could take the form of a financial donation. It could take the form of a product. So we would actually send products. And it could take the form of a workshop. Well, we will organize maybe a gynecologist or one of our team to go and run a menstrual health workshop. So that element of our business has been a really powerful way to galvanize women in different markets to get involved, where normally they'd be like, oh, I'll charge a fee. They really believe in what we're doing, and they see the benefit that actually growing our business means that we are able to support more women's access to quality menstrual health products. And so it's been a really, I guess we didn't, in a way, we didn't really plan this. We knew we wanted to be a business that supported women and girls and supported access to period care. I think it's been incredibly inspiring that so many women have come forward and said, yeah, we want to help you because we believe in what you're doing, and we see the power of it. So yeah, for us KOLs, there's sort of been, we wouldn't have approached a lot of these women. They've kind of gone out of their way to support us, which is fantastic. The idea of like paying for KOLs and stuff, I think a lot of people in China are sort of seeing through that a little bit. And the efficacy of just using a KOC, a woman who has a relationship with her friends, and actually all of our women who are part of our ambassadors or some of the more famous KOLs that we've worked with in Hong Kong and Singapore, they genuinely use our products and like them. So I think that whole thing of just like paying for people to say nice things about your product, it doesn't seem very us, but it also doesn't seem that we need to, because we do have a product we believe in. We have a product that's genuinely better for your body, better for the planet, and better for women and girls in need. So I feel like KOLs and us, it's a nuanced answer. Sorry if that's not.
No. You guys are a pretty small company. So I think that, for you guys, it sounds like being able to spend the money in places that really matter, which, like you said, are some of these, giving back to the community. I think it sounds like that is a better use of your budget, and more in line with your message than, because KOLs are very expensive, very expensive in China. And so, you really have to pick and choose where that money is going to go. And so, like you said, for you guys, it's very important to be able to, instead of paying the KOL, to maybe spend that money on giving back to various community efforts. And that makes me think of, I had seen, I guess, Olivia posting on LinkedIn that during COVID-19 that you guys were donating products to female hospital workers. Could you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I mean, that's a really good example of our social impact business model. I think for us, when we heard about the supply chain issues in Hubei and the fact that medical workers were really struggling to get access to period care, we were going through a process anyway in China of reviewing and working out which charitable organizations we want to work with. So we decided to sort of redirect our efforts for those 3 months and support the healthcare workers. We donated across Hong Kong and mainland China 10,000 pads to doctors and nurses during the kind of peak time of really kind of straitened supply chains. So that was kind of March and April. We made those donations. I think for us, whatever is happening in the world, women still need access to period care. And it's a form, in a way, of period poverty if you're having to use one product for too long. And there's big health implications to that as well. So for us, we're a small company. We can't make as much of a, big donation that maybe some of the bigger businesses could. But it was really important for us to find hospitals that were that had a large female staff, and that were in an area where they'd really struggled to get access to menstrual care products. So we had one team member full-time calling hospitals, identifying the way that we could get the pads from Shanghai, our warehouse, into Hubei, which obviously was hugely difficult given it was kind of effectively the province was on lockdown. I think for us, it's sort of our duty to be, in order to be an ethical business, that we support women and the sisterhood when there's a need. And now that crisis is kind of abated and supply chains are up and running, we're really proud to announce that we're working with a charity called Bright and Beautiful in Shanghai that supports young girls access to kind of from poorer backgrounds, access to education and kind of employment opportunities, etc. And we've worked with them on an ad hoc basis in the past, but as we grow, we really want to kind of firm that up. So we've built a really good relationship with Chen Xi, the founder, and we're going to make a really consistent and regular donation to them. And we're also in talks with a couple of other charitable partners in Shanghai and one in Qinghai. And we try to ensure that in each market we're forming relationships with the local partner. So in Hong Kong, we have a relationship with Period Poverty Hong Kong. in Singapore, we work with Aware, which is a kind of organization that promotes or that supports women who have been subject to domestic violence. And then in the UK, we've just struck up 2 relationships, one with a period poverty charity in Swansea and one catchily called Free the Flow in York, which supports students' access to menstrual care products. So again, like all of these different relationships are, some of them it's financial, some of them it's a product donation, some of them it's a workshop. It's different ways that we can support based on the needs of that charity. But yeah, I think for us, it's really important that as we grow, we share that growth and success with the wider community of women.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I want to pivot a little bit, or kind of go back to, we're talking about that you're a small company, a growing company. Obviously you guys are in multiple markets and it sounds like you're growing quite a lot, but, I think it sounds like you still have to think carefully, where your budgets are going. You're not a huge multinational or something. And I think, everybody's a little bit budget strapped or quite budget strapped at the moment, just with, everything that's been going on with COVID-19. So I'm curious if you have any advice or suggestions, or you've seen anything work really well, for other small companies that are, looking to get into the China market, don't have as much of a budget. It sounds like for you guys, collaborations, both online and offline, have been really key. But, do you have any other kind of advice or best practices?
Yeah, I think, the first one that does spring to mind is what you just said, collaboration. So like other brand friends that are a similar size, that are targeting a similar group of people. There's a brand, Boomy, that makes sort of sustainable, eco-friendly personal care products. And the founders are both based in Shanghai. It's a really nice fit with us because sustainability is really important. It's kind of around health and wellness, the products they sell. So having these, and we're actually present on their site. We're doing a collaboration this month for Mother's Day. So I think having these kind of mutually beneficial partnerships where the community that we've built, our WeChat community, will be really interested in trying out their conditioners and their shampoos, and likewise, their community that they've built will be super interested in what we've got to offer, the products that we stock. So that mutually kind of beneficial collaborations, I think, is really important. The second thing I'd say is, for us, providing education and providing through the communication that we create, ensuring that people learn something, or that there's a benefit to interacting with the brand, that they actually learn something about themselves or their bodies or their period or the products they're using, I think is really powerful, because it gives it's a value that you can very easily add, and it also means that there's a reason for people to follow you. There's a reason for people to interact with your brand. You're not just constantly pushing your products, but you're really equipping them with knowledge. And I would say that in China, in general, consumers are really thirsty for knowledge. They want information about the products they're using, much more so than in the West. People are really interested and engaged. And so being a brand that can feed that and encourage that is really important. And then I guess the final thing I'd say is what's been really successful for us is building relationships with businesses. So yes, we sell B2C, but the B2B element of what we've done and providing period care to companies, and ensuring that we can, all of that content and that richness, that we can package it in a way that a business can really see value in offering that as added value for their staff, has been a super super successful way that we've managed to grow as well.
That's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that channel. Do they tend to be like larger companies that are, I'm curious, like what types of companies are, kind of providing these services to their employees, like generally? What kind of company do you find most interested in this?
Well, I mean, it's really heartening because it's from the enormous to the tiny. I think businesses are starting to wake up to actually providing period care for their team is a meaningful benefit for staff. And thinking about women's menstrual health as part of your employees' overall health is something that a kind of responsible company should consider. So we've worked with, there's a company or a channel, they make kind of content. We've appeared on their channel actually, called Bottle Dream in Shanghai. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they've got a female team of 9 people, and we've provided their team with a cup workshop and cups for all of their team. But we've also worked with middle-sized companies. Like the very first company we brought on board was BBH, which is an ad agency. So I've worked there in Shanghai in that office, and I knew the leadership team, a bunch of amazing women. And I just felt that it would fit really well with their ethos and how much they believe in really caring for their staff. And they incredibly bought every single female member of staff a year's supply of organic cotton period care. Wow. And we provided a workshop, menstrual health in the workplace workshop for their team. And then there's also huge companies like the Mandarin Oriental in Hong Kong we've worked with, and WeWork, and like really massive employers that have a huge team of people. So I think that that's a really encouraging sign that businesses are starting to understand that menstrual health is a really important part of promoting female health, but also female equality. So as Olivia, our founder, says, without menstrual equality, there is no equality.
Rachel, this has been incredibly interesting. As I said, this is something that we've never talked about before on the podcast, and just something that I really haven't heard much about at all in China in general. I think it's incredibly interesting, and I think that you guys, as this smaller growing company, have a really interesting perspective on how you're marketing. I think some of the tactics that you mentioned, I just, it's maybe different than some of the other people that have come on the podcast. And that last bit that we just talked about selling to companies, I mean, that's super, super interesting. So thank you so much for coming on. If people want to find out more about Luuna, connect with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Well, you can check out our website. So that's luunanaturals.com. If you're outside of China, you can also order the products on Luuna Naturals via our Shopify. You can also follow us on Instagram. So we're at luuna.naturals, and Luuna is Luuna. And then Naturals. You can contact me directly if you're interested in kind of learning more. We're also recruiting for a couple of positions in the Shanghai office, so don't hesitate to drop me a line if that's something you'd be interested in. My email address is Rachel, RACHEL.W @Luuna, LUUNA-naturals.
Awesome. We'll be sure to include that in the show notes as well. And I'm sure you guys have a WeChat official account. I think I follow it actually, but what is the WeChat official account, since we have a lot of people that are, avid WeChat users?
Okay, great. So if you want to follow us on WeChat, it's just Luuna Naturals, all one word. So LUUNA Naturals.
Awesome. I will be sure to include all of that in the show notes so people can easily look it up and check you guys out. So again, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, pleasure. Really nice to talk to you, Lauren. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that interview with today's guest. You can find links to their contact info and detailed show notes for this episode on ChinaInfluencerMarketing.com. If you liked this episode and know somebody else who might like it too, don't forget to share. Thanks, and talk to you next week.